watch the fire burn. We burn down bridges, we stare at empty walls. And every minute and every day, we watch the fire burn. We burn down bridges, we stare at empty walls. And every minute and every day.
Hi, welcome back to the Cities Reimagined podcast, the show where we discuss all kinds of aspects related to alternative urban futures. I'm your host, Johannes Riegler. You might be wondering about the intro song of this episode. The song is called This Day Is Mine by the band Boys Club and was released back in 2008. And my guest this week, Stephan Fugger, is not only an editor for the regional media in Carinthia, Austria, but he was also the frontman of the band Boys Club. And you will hear more about that and about our backgrounds in alternative music in the interview.
What about all you good intentions? Are we all too blind to see? What about all you good intentions?
This episode of the Cities Reimagined podcast is about the role of local journalism for reimagining futures. Currently, we see that there's more and more media coverage on climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and related anthropogenic topics in the media. However, a lot of the reporting on, for example, climate change scenarios and in how far the atmosphere will continue to warm if greenhouse gas emissions are not cut drastically are difficult for many people to grasp, and it seems to be abstract and oftentimes unrelatable to the everyday life of many. Studies show that highlighting the local impacts of climate change is motivational for many for behavior change and action. On the other side, when people perceive the effects of global crisis as distant and taking place somewhere else, on the other side of the planet, for example, they might feel powerless and disengaged. For that reason, the news media can play an important role by framing stories in a manner that emphasizes the local perspectives alongside the global scale. But is that really the local media's task to do so? And what skill sets and interests are required to do so? Over the last years, I've been talking and exchanging regularly with my good friend Stephan Fugger on urban development in Klagenfurt and in Carinthia as such. Klagenfurt is a city which is, I would say not exactly known for doing things differently, where there is little culture of shaping urban futures together and little culture of co-creation, and not many people seem to challenge the conventional paradigms, and it seems very difficult to change things and to steer things up over here. Stephan is an editor for the newspaper RegionalMedien Carinthia, which is a local news paper, a news outlet which reaches every household in the region as it gets shipped to every household freely. They also have a strong online presence in recent years, and Stephan increasingly covered very local stories related to climate change and interviewed a diverse range of people in the area who are concerned about urban development. We recorded the interview in August 2023 in Klagenfurt, and as I'm editing the interview now 2 days later, the region was hit by the heaviest rainfall ever recorded. The rain almost hasn't stopped in 48 hours, which caused officials to call for code red. And in some parts of the region, almost 300 liters of rain fell per square meter in just 2 days, which caused catastrophic floodings, landslides, and avalanches of large masses of rocks. Streets and buildings have been destroyed, and there are a couple of villages in the mountains which are completely cut off for days now. Across the border to Slovenia, which is only some 30 kilometers from Klagenfurt, the situation is looking even worse, including human casualties. And it's not just over yet, and it has a very dystopian feel to it, recording this intro and edit a podcast inside here while outside the sirens go off every other minute.
I've got the answer. I just can't help myself. I said I just can't help myself.
So the effects of the climate crisis clearly are observable here in the region, and it's only expected to get worse with rising CO2 levels. So it was time for me to sit down with Stephan and find out about the role of local media and local journalism in linking these very local effects and this highly complex state of human crisis caused by human activity.
It's better to easily. You know you're not alone. Why does it take so long? You know you're not alone. It's better to
Hey Stefan, it's so nice to be here with you in a basement in Klagenfurt. How are you doing?
Oh, fine, thanks. I love being in a basement, especially this room with a lot of instruments. It reminds me of my youth and my younger days.
We're in the south of Austria at the moment, in a city called Klagenfurt, and I cannot imagine a better room to have this interview in with you. So we are very comfortable in a very humid and damp rehearsal room in a youth center in Klagenfurt, where actually 20 years ago, this was a kind of infrastructure for the local punk rock and hardcore scene with a lot of concerts where people met, and it was a kind of institutions. And I'm very happy that we got the key to this rehearsal space from my good friend Mike Galishnik from the band Dorkatron, which is really cool. And this is also, I have to say, Stefan, we know each other for some 20 years due to this punk and hardcore scene, which was at its peak, I would say, in the early 2000s. And I think you contributed to that a lot by playing in a lot of bands at that time. That was at one Störsender, Animotion, later on Boys Club. But also you organized a lot of concerts yourself with Modeschau collectives, and you actually run the coolest club in town back then, the Running Sushi Indie Club, which somehow put Klagenfurt on the map internationally when it comes to the scene, I would say. How did being part of this DIY, do-it-yourself ethic or this culture at that time, very political subculture, shape you, and how does it shape your work today?
Oh, thanks for the roses and thanks for the reminder of the good old times. I think it's always dangerous to live in the past. So it's great that we are here, and we are right now here in a rehearsal place, and I think it's very symbolic. 3 years ago, I was here to report about the change. If we think upstairs, there was a concert room, which is now a room for fitness.
Right.
So they changed the whole setting. The space, which was a space for punks, for metalheads, for young bands, is gone. And now the youth is not interested in concerts anymore. So they made a fitness room. So it shows that the youth is really interested in being healthy, being in good shape, which is a good thing. But I think it's a sign of the time. We had this really strong community. We had a lot of fun, and we had this thinking that we can change something and we can be active and create something. I think it's always about creating something, and that you realize that you can change something.
Right.
No matter where you come from. I come from a quite middle poor family, and you don't have to be rich to organize concerts. You can do it, and you can publish a record. You can do it. You just have to be creative and to want it.
I totally agree, and I think this early 2000s was really, at least in Klagenfurt, this was a very special time in a way where there were so many people involved in the scene which somehow contributed to it and somehow felt empowered to just try things out and experience with things, and I think it was great.
What I still take from that time is that you meet someone and you respect him and his opinion, that you meet eye on eye and you argue about something, that you have different opinions, but you still want to just talk and have a good time.
Today we talk about something else. We could do a podcast easily on that time as well, and it must probably would have some entertaining 40 episodes, I would say. But today we talk about something else, and that is very local journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work in local journalism? How's your job, your daily job? What do you do?
Okay, my daily job is to report about local news. I'm not interested in international news, so what Russia or is doing doesn't matter to me. But I can bring an example. When the war started against Ukrainian, I had this interview with a young woman from Ukraine. She came to Carinthia, and I had an interview with her, how she felt, how the war started, and it was a very emotional story, and I was really touched. It was, and so I felt even if you're in Carinthia, in a really safe place, and you think you're not a war reporter, I'm just a simple journalist, can interview someone who saw this war, who felt this war, and who experienced this war. It was really strange and terrifying.
It might be the role of good local journalism, if you will, if you break down this very global events, this where the world is heading to a very local level. You just said that by what is going on in Ukraine and Russia, how that translates into a very safe place in Carinthia. What are the effects? What are the stories behind this this global crisis and war to the local level in Klagenfurt? Climate change has arrived in Europe and especially also in this region. So there's almost nobody who doesn't see the effects of climate change unless they live under a rock, I would say. But how do you perceive these changes in this region, these effects of climate change, biodiversity crisis, all these kind of changes in the atmosphere and in the global ecology? How do you perceive that?
Okay. Just yesterday, I had an interview with an operator of a campsite near Lake Wörthersee. During heavy rain, the roads become impassable. It's not a threatening situation, but it's rather unpleasant. So the guy told me the people are not very amused about this. Kids find it funny that the streets are full of water. So he wants to ask the politicians, the responsible people, what can they do that it doesn't happen again? Okay, so the heavy rain is resulting, has a negative effect. This is a sign of soil sealing, and this is really an important topic. In my opinion, Klagenfurt or the politicians are not aware of these dangers. Mm-hmm. They have to react. They have something in common. They want to change it, but it's too slowly. The climate is changing faster than the laws are coming.
Do you perceive in your work that there is an increasing awareness of these kind of connections? For example, what you just described, the soil sealing and increased risk of flooding, and also is there an awareness among not only politicians but in society as such that climate change is really going to affect this region and Central Europe as well?
In my opinion, as far as I can see it, politicians are more aware of it, and it doesn't matter from which party they come from, whether it's left wing or right wing or middle. Klagenfurt is part of the EU mission, the 100 climate neutral smart cities. So they have this tool, which is really great. They promote this tool, but I don't think they do it fast enough. So I come to explain it. And you don't have to forget the citizen. The citizen also has a lot of responsibilities and ways of acting and changing. As far as I see, the citizen is not aware of it.
Yeah, what you just described, just for those who are not very familiar with this EU mission, so the EU mission on climate neutral cities is 100 cities across Europe have been selected to who have a high ambition to become climate neutral by 2030, which is like in 7 years. And it's very challenging, or a very ambitious target, I would say. And I would totally agree that it's essential to take the people, the residents, and whoever uses the city aboard of this transformation, because in the end it touches everybody's life. But do you have some ideas how you could break that? Not you personally, but how that could be, how citizens or residents could be made more aware of this need to change towards or transform towards climate neutrality, and how that connects in the end also to these extreme weather events which we see at the moment.
That's a really hard question. Because right now citizens are too lame, and they are not willing to change their lives. So it's very uncomfortable to leave the car at home and use the bicycle. I do it for myself, so I don't accept myself from this. I'm also very lame. I think the best practice shows how the mindset is still missing is that we have this project where the Bahnhofstraße, the street to the station, apart 60 meters from this street was closed for cars. Politicians didn't make it to convince the people that this is space, that this valuable space where they can dance, where they can hang around, where they just have a cup of coffee. They had tables where people could work. The people had this chance, but they didn't realize the chance.
Nowadays, I have more this outside looking in look onto Klagenfurt. So I don't get the details. I just see a little bit what is happening and what is changing, and how the ambitions change and what is happening in the public space. But what I think is missing oftentimes, not only in Klagenfurt, is a common vision, a common goal, which is co-created with the people living in the city. We want to achieve this, and this will be great for our city. Having a plan, going in a certain direction, and taking everybody, or whoever wants to be on board. There will always be people who will not be on board, and that's fine. That's democracy. Co-creating something with the people, a common vision where you can work towards. Do you have some ideas how urban development can be communicated better to residents, and how they can be taken on board of this process?
That's really, really a hard question. I can tell you that the politicians of the city Klagenfurt presented an urban development concept. So they have this concept, which is called Urban Development Concept 2025, which is in 2 years. So I guess people are willing to change, but they don't understand. They don't get the message how create a positive effect for the city. Yesterday we had this news about a star. Everybody knows him. But I can see that didn't resonate so well.
Did not many people
it
open the story?
Wasn't very successful.
Yeah.
2 hours after that, I published an article on our Facebook site about an IT company. They are planning to rebuild a location which is more than 200 years old. They said they don't want a new building on the green meadow. They want an old building. 4 buildings have monument protection. They are really in catastrophic shape.
Yeah.
And I saw that a lot of people resonated to this article. So we reached more than 10,000 people with this article. So I see that people are interested in how can resources be reduced, because when this company goes this way, they don't have to consume so many resources.
Yeah.
We know all that so many resources are wasted from the building. I think this is a good way. It shows, a modern company shows us there is a way, and that you can reconstruct old buildings.
I think this is a very good example, because this building, I think it was from the monarchy,
Yeah.
a horse stable and storage for the food for the horses, if I remember correctly, and it has been vacant for
17 years.
for 17 years.
It was, he says that homeless people lived there.
Yeah.
They destroyed a lot of infrastructure, but he has this plan.
But it's great because also the fact that so many people open the stories shows that they're interested in what is happening in their immediate surrounding. So they're more interested in the redevelopment of this building than on Prince being on vacation in the city. And this also translates to what you said earlier, that there is this climate crisis and the effects of the climate crisis. And I think this is a very interesting point, how local media can make this connection between these global effects, which somehow, materialize in a very local space, and what can be done, or how can you redevelop vacant buildings in a way that they consume less resources, less space, less green space, and so on.
It's really, I think it's the politicians, they have to bring the message better. The concept is great, but nobody understands this concept.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be an urban developer. Mm-hmm. You have to, just like you, mm-hmm. you are into this kind of stories, but the citizen doesn't know it.
Yeah, it's far away.
They just they want to see how they can make ends meet.
Further, what do you think is the role of local media to reimagine cities and region and overcome this non-sustainable status quo? I'm asking this question because we know that there's not anymore information deficit on climate change. Everybody knows basically that we need to transform. How can local journalism spread knowledge and also inspiring stories of change and transformation to a larger audience?
That's a really good question, and perhaps you get something wrong. I don't see myself as someone who wants to influence someone else. That's not my role. As a media, we have to publish stories which are interesting to read, and so.
But I think you kind of do. You bring these inspiring stories. You get them out there.
I can tell you a lot of examples. We already talked about this before we recorded this. I was at the press conference to the urban development concept. Mm-hmm. After that, I wanted to make a photo with the two politicians, and it was a really great space under the trees. But it was hard to make a photo because there were so many cars parking there. Really? Yeah. And so I wrote this in the first sentence so that everybody sees that the city is not ready to reduce the car. And we have this concept, but we are not ready. We have to change.
Yeah. And I absolutely love that line of yours to this article. Do you think local media should be more critical when reporting about local news and local urban development projects?
Of course, that's our responsibility, and I have to admit that sometimes we and especially me are not too critical. I have this example. There is this rural community. We know that in small villages, stores are closing, people move away. So I heard about a new building project. I found out that it was a supermarket, but the supermarket was not located in the center of the village. It was 5 kilometers away. I didn't get it. Yeah. I asked the mayor, why is this new supermarket 5 kilometers away? Yeah. He said, it's fine.
Yeah, these ideas. I don't know, this situation where you show like, okay, the city or the town has an ambition, but what they are doing is the complete opposite of implementing that vision, or?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of time this is happening, especially when you think about zones and space, which is sealed. They don't want it, but in fact they do it.
I totally agree with you. I think it would be great, or is an important aspect of local media to show these contradictions, what is between visions and reality. I find that a very fascinating and interesting aspect of what you just said, task of local media, not only bringing the stories, but actually making these connections between different news segments and developments. But of course, it also requires from whoever is writing the stories to make these links and be aware of this great larger picture, maybe in which these stories are embedded in.
And also, you have to be an expert in
Yeah.
rezoning. You
Yeah.
have to be an expert in how zones are developed
Yeah,
and which laws are.
at hand there.
So this is not an easy, easy
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
It's hard. We have a lot of times we have this topic about rezoning. You can't rezone an area if there is a zone for building infrastructure. It is. You can't bring it back.
Yeah,
So first politicians, some are starting to rethink, say they see the value
Yeah.
from space, because I think 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they were like, oh, we have to rezone
yeah.
so many spaces. But
The-
nowadays they starting slowly to realize which.
I think so too, and I think it will only come. At least that's my hope. I'm an optimist, so I hope they recognize that sooner than later. That by changing zoning, especially in this region, which has suburbanization of every small town eats into the landscape like cancer. It is really crazy here, I would say, which triggers all these other effects like the dependency on cars and a lot of other problems related to that. Where do you see local media go from here? What is the vision for your work on the newspaper for the next 10 years?
Local media can do one thing. They can bring topics into discourse. They can make people talk about something. They can make people regard something. Okay, I think that's our role. That to show the possibilities, to show new ways. How can we change the world? How can we change the city? For me, I'm really interested how the city is changing, and how a city or a rural area can change in a positive way.
So coming back to our punk and hardcore background, I really have the feeling that the subculture we were part of in the early 2000s was spanning boundaries. There was such an active scene and an ecosystem really where many people contributed in one way or the other and put this small and very sleepy town on the map nationally and internationally when it comes to punk and hardcore. How do you perceive the role of Klagenfurt culturally in a region which is very reactionist, traditional, and I would also say not too welcoming for change and transformation? I would love to see a spirit again, like the one we had in the early 2000s, where it seemed like anything is possible, at least in the subculture. You just experiment, you inspire other people, you get your classmates into this, and you have something to strive and to work out on the go.
I think these days are over and we have to accept it. But as far as I can see, the youth, they are very interested and they are very emotional and they are very clever and they want to change some things. But I think I can't explain it. Perhaps they are afraid. Perhaps perhaps they are not angry enough.
Mm-hmm.
I miss some kind of anger.
Yeah.
Positive anger, because punk and hardcore is very aggressive. It's full of anger, and this is a power you can take. And this fascinates me from my youngest days on. As far as I can see, the youth nowadays is very comfortable. Perhaps they are a little bit too comfortable, and they should feel this anger.
Yeah. Bringing that back to climate crisis and biodiversity and that kind of discussion, that there is a lot of climate anxiety increasingly, especially in young people who are feel robbed of their future potentially. And that brings us back somehow to at least to me, to very local newspaper reporting, because you break down again what we discussed already, these global trends, these challenges into very local ground, because climate anxiety often comes with feeling hopeless and feeling not knowing what strings to pull and how to connect to a certain topic. But local media can break it down to young people or also older people to make it somehow tangible, to somehow make it, in Germany we would say, angreifbar.
It's also when we talk about a future, how can we reach young people, and I just want to tell young people that they can write us. Every young citizen can write me an email and say there's something going wrong.
And you're father of two, right? How angry are your kids in general?
My kids are not angry at all. I think they're very interested. Mm-hmm. They are interested in climate change. They're interested in politicians.
What age are they in now?
11 and 13. Yeah, with the older one, I love to watch Tip.
Yeah,
news,
that's the national news on TV here.
And when something about politicians is coming, my older son is really it's exciting for him. Yeah.
That's cool. That brings us to the last question of today, and I would say almost the most important question of this interview. What are the top 3 punk and hardcore songs to change the world?
Okay, it's really hard for me. Okay, the first one is Black Flag, Rise Above.
Yes.
The second, I would say, is a Dead Kennedy song, because Cello Biafra, for me, he's such a smart guy.
Yeah.
When I read about him and his opinions, it also changed me. I think it's Holiday in Cambodia.
Yeah.
And the third one is a cover version. I love Sick of It All, We Stand Alone. And they cover Betray from Minor Threat. It's hard for me to just mention one song, but I love whole albums. I think this We Stand Alone, Sick of It All album is so great because it's this anger I was talking about, this positive anger which can create something.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Stephan, for your time and willingness to talk to me in this very damp rehearsal space here. It's really cool. Thank you so much. If you feel angry about something in Klagenfurt, send an email to Stephan. He might take it. Don't be shy. He might take it up.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I say thank you.
That was my chat with Stephan Fugger from RegionalMedien Carinthia. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the Cities Reimagined podcast to not miss any shows in the future. And I would absolutely love to hear from you. Please get in touch with me via the Cities Reimagined social media channels or via email. That is johannes@anthropocene.city. To play you out of this episode, here's another song by one of Stephan's projects. This one is by Der Schwarze Schwarm, and the song is called A Ministry of Reconciliation. And I highly recommend that you check out the other work of Stephan, also of the band Boys Club. Besides many things, Klagenfurt is known for its very notorious dark, grey and foggy winters. So if you ever happen to be in the city between, let's say, mid-October, end of October and mid-February, and you walk the streets and it's foggy, make sure you listen to Der Schwarze Schwarm, because I think it captures the feeling you get from walking the streets perfectly. This was all for today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It has been produced, edited, and recorded by myself, Janis Riegler, and I hope to catch you soon.
I try to speak, my mouth is dry, I'm confused, it's a tragedy. I'll write it down. I feel sorrow, I am selfish. Don't look into my eyes. I have come to see darkness. Don't look into my eyes. I feel sorrow, I am selfish. Don't look into my eyes. I have come to see darkness. Don't look into my eyes. I feel sorrow, I am selfish. Don't look into my eyes. I have come to see darkness. Don't look into my eyes. I tell you lies ain't it fun, and I know what I've done. Don't look into my eyes. I tell you lies ain't it fun, and I know what I've done.